B'ezrat Hashem, we're starting a new parak today. Samech Vav Amud Aleph. So it's not a long parak. The first Mishnah talks about things having to do with ketubah a little bit and eating truma. So just a few background things over here. There's when a lady gets married and she brings in items into the marriage. Let's say she has money that she's bringing in, animals that she's bringing in, furniture that she's bringing in, whatever it is. So there's two ways that it could be included in the ketubah, or that it could be brought in. One is it's nichsei tzon barzel. Nichsei tzon barzel means whatever the value is at the time that she's bringing it in, that's what the amount that the husband owes her. And it doesn't matter if it goes up in value, goes down in value. So let's say she brings in, some jewelry, and at the time that she gets married, the jewelry is $100,000 worth of jewelry. So if it's brought in as nichsei tzon barzel, that means if the husband divorces her or dies, automatically he pays the $100,000. Doesn't matter if at the time of the divorce it went up in value to 150 or it went down. Doesn't matter. He accepts on himself the value that it was at the time that they got married. Then you have what's called nichsei melug. Nichsei melug is it belongs to her. The husband gets the benefits of it. He eats the perot of it. Meaning, let's say she brings in an animal. So the husband has the rights to the milk and the hair and the this, but it belongs to her. And if it goes down in value, she goes down.
Principle of it is her.
The principle is hers, right? And he gets the perot. He gets the produce of it, the product. But at the end of the day, when he's returning it to her, if he gives a get and he's returning her those items, so he doesn't have to pay her money. It goes down in value, she takes the loss. If it goes up in value, she takes the gain because it was hers the whole time.
That's her property.
Is it right? So that's called nichsei melug. Okay, those are the two types of things. That's just background information. Also, just remember, we already learned that if a lady who's not allowed to marry a kohen marries a kohen, once she has bia with him, she becomes a chalala. Once she's a chalala, that's it. She cannot eat truma anymore. So it says almana lekohen gadol, grusha v'chalutza lekohen hediot. Basically, any relationship of a kohen that's not allowed to have either almana to a kohen gadol or grusha v'chalutza to a kohen hediot. So ichnisa lo avdei melug v'avdei tzon barzel. She brought in avadim. Okay, let's say she brought in avdei melug. That if the eved grows up and goes up in value, it's hers the whole time. Or avdei tzon barzel, she brought it in and she said, listen, right now I'm bringing in this eved, the value is X amount, so that's what I'm evaluating him as, and that's the value that you're going to owe me at the time of if there's a get. So avdei melug lo yochlu betruma. Since she's an almana marrying a kohen gadol, the avdei melug, the avadim that the principal belongs to her, they don't eat truma. Avdei tzon barzel yochlu, but the avadim that she evaluated the value and it's fully his, meaning if it goes up in value, it's his. If it goes down in value, it's his. Those avadim, they eat truma. We're gonna explain in the Gemara a little bit more. Ve'eluhen avdei melug. The Gemara explained. The Mishnah explains. This is avdei melug. Im metu la, ve'im hotiru la. If they die or go down in value, they depreciate, she takes the loss. But if they go up in value, she gets the gain. Afapi shehu chayav bimzonotan. Even though the husband is responsible to provide for them, the husband is responsible to feed his wife and the avadim of his wife. So harei elu lo yochlu b'truma. Those they cannot eat truma because they're really hers. If they go up in value, down in value, it's her eved. Ve'eluhen avdei tzon barzel. The following are avdei tzon barzel. Im metu lo, v'im hutiru lo. That if they go up in value, tzon barzel. If they go up in value, it's his, gain, and if they go down in value, it's his loss. So ho'il v'hu chayav ba'achriyutan, harei elu yochlu b'truma. So those avadim will eat truma because the husband is responsible. He takes achrayut. He's he's chayav in their achrayut. He has to take responsibility. If something happens, he has to pay in the value. So if she came in with this eved, worth $100,000, and something happened to the eved, he got damaged, he got whatever it is, it's the husband's responsibility to make sure that she gets her $100,000 at the end, at the time of the ketubah is being paid. So the achrayut, the responsibility is on him. Therefore, since the responsibility is on him, it's viewed as his eved in terms of feeding the eved truma. So bat Yisrael shenised lekohen. If we have a regular, not a almana, just a regular kasher bat Yisrael that married a kohen, v'ichnisa lo avadim, and she brought in avadim. So ben avdei meluk, ben avdei tzon barzel, hare'elu yochlu b'truma. Regardless of what type of avadim they are, they eat truma. Ubat kohen shenisid leYisrael, and if you have opposite, a bat kohen who at home, under her father's house, she's allowed to eat truma, and then she gets married to Yisrael, and she brought in avadim, v'ichnisa lo avadim, ben avdei meluk, ben avdei tzon barzel, regardless of what type of avadim they are, hare'elu lo yochlu b'truma. They cannot eat truma. So basically, 3 halachot in the Mishnah. Halacha number 1 was if you had somebody pasul marrying a kohen. You had a grusha marrying a kohen or almana marrying a kohen gadol. So it depends what type of avadim she brings in. If she brings in the avadim and the price is locked in and the husband is responsible for them, then they eat truma. If the price is not locked in and she's responsible for them, if they go up in value or down in value, it's hers. It's her gain and loss. So then, since she cannot eat truma, they don't eat truma. And if it's a bat Yisrael, regular bat Yisrael to a kohen, then she can eat truma. Her avadim could eat truma. Her husband could eat truma. It doesn't matter what type of avadim. And if it's a bat kohen to Yisrael, then once she's married to Yisrael, there's no truma anymore. So the avadim don't eat truma. Okay. Says the Gemara, "Va'avdei melug lo yochlu b'truma." So the avadim that are avdei melug, that are hers, they don't eat truma. Amai, how come they don't eat truma? Lihave kikinyano shekana kinyan. It should be like the kinyan of the kohen that gets a kinyan. Meaning, if the kohen has a kinyan, he has something that's under his domain, and that kinyan gets another kinyan. So the halacha is that also eats truma. The Gemara is going to bring an example. The Tanya. Minayin lekohen shenasa isha vekana avadim sheochlu b'truma. How do we know if a kohen just marries a woman or if a kohen buys avadim? How do we know they eat truma? Shneimar, it says in the pasuk vekohen ki yikne nefesh kinyan kaspo. When a kohen is koneh a nefesh kinyan kaspo, he either acquires a woman through kesef like kiddushin, or he buys an eved, kinyan kaspo, hu yochal bo. They eat truma. So you see that if a kohen is mekadesh a lady, or if a kohen buys an eved, midoraita, they eat truma. Uminayin leisha shekanta avadim. Now how do we know if the wife of the kohen, she goes and buys avadim? Or va'avadav shekanu avadim. Or if the avadim of the kohen are able to buy avadim or acquire avadim. Now Rashi explains, even if the master doesn't have any reshut in it, meaning there's a concept of somebody giving a matana to an eved al menat that the master doesn't have any reshut in it. So even if it's done in such a way that someone goes to the eved and says, here, I'm going to give you avadim on condition that your master doesn't have any reshut in it, still those avadim of the eved of the kohen, they're able to eat truma, because there's a halacha of kinyano shekanaket. Yes, avadim of eved that have, right, Rashi, I mean, not to get into it too much right now, but Rashi explains there's a scenario where it's possible that the master has an eved, and that eved acquires another eved, but that eved is not the eved of the master. Generally, we say Masha Kana eved.
Eliezer had eved, for example.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're talking about Rabbi Eliezer in the Gemara.
No,
You talking about Avram, Eliezer? Okay.
Yeah, because it's the Eved of Avram, yeah?
Yes.
We call him Eved of Avram or just
Eliezer, Eved Avram.
and he has, I'm sure.
So let's say somebody gave him. Generally, the rule is Masha kana Eved, kana Rabo. If the Eved acquires something, automatically it belongs to the master. The Eved doesn't have a ability to have, but an Eved can be, someone can give a matana to an Eved on condition, and put in the matana a condition that the master doesn't have any reshut in it. So I can go to an Eved and say, here
Even
is
everything that Eved that makes for everything that makes it goes to the Eved.
generally Masha kana Eved, kana Rabo. Anything that an Eved is koneh, it goes to the master.
So it's Eved, his master is Eved, yeah?
That's what it should be, right? But I can go to an Eved and I could say, I'm going to give you this item, I'm going to give you this watch, and I'm making a condition that I'm giving you this watch as a kinyan, al menat that your master doesn't have any reshut in it. So then it belongs to the Eved. The Eved could be koneh. So if I go to the Eved and I give him avadim like that,
possible, but we have a halacha that everything that Eved owns it goes to the master.
okay, good. So this is a separate sugya that discusses this, but Rashi just brings here, and Rashi is saying the case is that the Eved is koneh, the other Eved, even without it belonging to the master.
Cannot be.
Yeah, it could.
Everything that Eved owns
This
goes
is
to the
that's
master.
yeah, that's
like
a separate.
Kid. Like this is more than the kid. His kid is belong to the master.
Okay, good, but there is a concept of, if you want to read the Rashi inside, we could read it inside. It's coming from a different Gemara. The Gemara says elsewhere that the Gemara has this discussion that whatever that an Eved you can give something to an Eved al menat that the master doesn't have reshut in it. So either way,
Okay.
So the point is that if the avadim acquire other avadim, so how do we know sheyochlu b'truma? How do we know that they eat truma? Shneemar v'chohen ki yikne nefesh kinyan kaspo hu yochal bo. Kinyano shekana kinyan ochel. So you see, if a kohen has a kinyan, and that kinyan makes another kinyan, so that thing eats truma also. So if a kohen has an eved, and that eved is koneh another eved, that third eved eats truma. And if a kohen has a wife that he made kiddushin, he was like kinyan of a wife. You have to understand, it's different than kinyan of an eved. It's not like you go to the store and you pay for it and you buy it. It's called the kinyan isur. The kinyan is not it's not like you own the goof. You don't own any goof. It's a kinyan that she's mishubat to you. No, absolutely not.
Nothing.
No, not according to any Gemara. No, there's no. There are chiyuvim that you have to her, and there are chiyuvim that she has to you.
It or no?
No, there are chiyuvim that you have to provide for her, and there are chiyuvim that she has to you, but that doesn't make her an eved.
Because whatever she earns, you get it.
No, that's a separate sugya of what the
I know
wife could earn, but either way. So the point is that kinyano shekana kinyan, if his kinyan acquires another kinyan, that eats truma. So how come the wife's avadim here don't eat truma? We said almana marries kohen gadol, and she brings in eved avdei melug, they don't eat truma. Well, what do you mean? She's kohen's kinyan, and her kinyan should eat truma. So the Gemara says kol haochel ma'achil, kol she'eno ochel eno ma'achil. Whoever can eat truma themselves, they can make somebody else eat truma. But whoever cannot eat truma themselves, they cannot make somebody else eat truma. So this lady, she cannot eat truma herself. Why? Because she's an almana, she married a kohen gadol. So once they get married and they have bia, she becomes a halala. She cannot eat truma anymore. Once she cannot eat truma anymore, her avadim also cannot eat truma. So the Gemara says, is that really true, that if you cannot eat truma, you cannot make something else eat truma? Velo, v'arei arel v'chol ha'temeim she'enan ochlin u'ma'achilin. So a kohen who is an arel, he doesn't have a brit milah, or a kohen who is tameh, right? So they don't eat truma, but their kinyanim eat truma, their wife eats truma, their avadim eat truma. So you see that even if you don't eat truma, you can cause something else to eat truma. So the lady here too, okay, she's a halala, she doesn't eat truma, but maybe she can cause her avadim to eat truma, the same way that an eved who's an arel, who doesn't have brit milah, he could cause somebody else to eat truma. So the Gemara says, no, hatam pumayu kaivlu. Over there it's different. Over there it's an external thing that's causing them not to be able to eat truma. Meaning, it's something that, okay, right now he's an arel. If he was able to get a brit milah, then he would be okay. Or right now he's tameh, so once he becomes tahor, okay, so he's okay. He be'etzem is shayach to eating truma. It's possible for him to eat truma. There's just something blocking him right now. Over here, she became a halala. She became a person who is completely disqualified from truma. So Gemara says, okay, but still, I'm going to find you an example of somebody who cannot eat truma, who causes someone else to eat truma. Someone else will eat truma because of them. V'arim mamzer, she'en ochel u'ma'achil. So mamzer cannot eat truma, but a mamzer can cause someone else to eat truma. Now, what's this case? So if you have a bat Yisrael that marries a kohen, okay? So the halacha is that if she's allowed to eat truma as long as they're married, if the kohen dies, as long as she has some offspring from the kohen, then she's allowed to eat truma. So if they have a son together, and that son is alive, she's allowed to eat truma. Now let's say they have a child, and that child goes and marries a mamzer, and they have a grandchild that's a mamzer. And then her husband, so this lady's bat Yisrael, married a kohen. Okay? So she's allowed to eat truma. Okay? They have a child. Okay? That child marries a mamzer. We want to marry a mamzer. Okay? Then,
he's not allowed to, but he did.
He's not allowed to, but he did it. And then that couple has a child. Okay?
They have kids of mamzer.
Mamzer, yeah. So basically the kohen and his wife have a grandchild that's a mamzer. Okay? So now, let's say the child of the kohen is niftar. So all they're left is with a grandchild. So she's still allowed to eat truma because she's married to her husband. Now let's say the kohen is niftar.
Who's she?
The wife of the kohen. She was a bat Yisrael who married a kohen, and they have a grandchild that's a mamzer.
So she had a truma from the beginning?
Yeah, she had truma from the beginning. Now the question is like this. The kohen is niftar.
Kohen is
now kohen is niftar. So now she can't have truma anymore because of her husband, but she's still allowed to have truma because she has lineage from her husband. She has a zera from her husband.
But it's mamzer.
It's a mamzer. Still, you see, even though the mamzer himself is not allowed to eat truma, but the what's it called? But because of him, his grandmother is allowed to eat truma. So you see that even though you cannot eat truma, you can cause something else to eat truma. That's the proof that the Gemara is bringing.
Wow.
So the Gemara says.
What kind of cases they get? I don't know how they think about these cases.
So the Gemara says, you see that it's not true that everybody who eats truma, who cannot eat truma, cannot cause somebody else to eat truma. So the Gemara says, like this. The Gemara says, Amar Ravina. So mamzer shein ochel ma'achil. Right. Amar Ravina. Kinyan ochel ka'amar. We're not talking about causing someone to eat in this scenario where it's because you have a zera of a kohen. We're talking about a kinyan. Someone who has a kinyan on something, their kinyan can only eat if they can eat. So this lady who has a kinyan on the eved, she's a halala. So since she cannot eat, her kinyan cannot eat. But if it's the kinyan of the man, that it's brought in as nichsei tzon barzel, that it's put in the ketubah that he owes that amount and he's responsible for it, so then it's the man's kinyan. He's allowed to eat truma, so the avadim could eat. Those avadim could eat. Okay, so kinyan ochel ma'achil, she'en ochel enu ma'achil. Okay, Rava amar mideoraita mechalachli. Rava says really mideoraita, these avadim they eat truma. The avadim of the avdei meluk, the avadim of the lady, even though she's a halala, her avadim mideoraita eat truma. V'Rabbanan hu degazrubuhu. Rabbanan came and said, no, those avadim cannot eat truma. Why? Kedei shetomar, ani eni ochelet, avdi enan ochlin, zonai etzlo, hilkach ati la'afuka. We want, this is a relationship that's not allowed to happen. The almana and the Kohen Gadol, or Gerusha and Kohen. So we want to put a little bit more pressure on her to say, like, forget this. I don't want this. So we say, listen, you cannot eat truma, you're halala. Even your avadim cannot eat truma. Even though midoraita, the avadim are allowed to eat truma, we say, no, they cannot eat truma. So she feels like a little bit more of an outcast, and, I'm not eating, avadim are not eating. What type of relationship is this? So I'm just like a zona here? That is... So,
to be Eved of the Kohen is a... what you call that?
Chashuv thing?
Yeah, yes. Somebody will just make himself Eved to the Kohen to just eat the terumah.
Okay. Rav Ashi Amar, let's do a few more lines to the bottom.
Honor.
Yeah. Rav Ashi Amar, Gzera Shema Ta'achil La'achar Mita. Sorry. Rav Ashi says, you know why the avadim that are hers cannot eat truma? Because we're worried she's going to continue to feed them if her husband dies. Meaning, really, midoraita, she's a halala, she cannot eat truma. But the avadim should be able to eat truma. Her avadim should be able to eat truma because they're a kinyan of her who is a kinyan of the kohen. But still, we're worried that if we allow her to feed them truma, so she's going to feed them truma after the kohen is niftar. So the Gemara says, "Elama'ata bat Yisrael sheni said lekohen lo ta'achil." If that's the case, bat Yisrael that married a kohen, she also shouldn't eat truma because if her husband dies, she's going to continue eating truma or giving truma to her avadim. Why don't we worry that she's going to do it after her husband is niftar? So Ela Amar Avashi ba'almana kohenet da'atya le'aruye. We're talking about lad le'aruye. We're talking about an almana who was a kohenet, meaning her father is a kohen. She's a bat kohen. She's also an almana. So she's eating truma at home in her father's house. Then she goes marries this kohen gadol, and she's not allowed to eat truma anymore in his house, because she became a halala, but her avadim could eat truma. So we're worried if the husband is niftar, she's going to continue feeding her avadim truma. And at that point, they can't eat truma because they're not the kinyan of the Kohen Gadol anymore. Originally, her avadim were eating truma because she was living in her father's house, who was a Kohen. In Sivle Lehai, she got married to the Kohen Gadol. Achli betruma, they eat truma de gavrai. They eat truma because they belong to their avadim, their kinyan of the husband. V'hashta hadri le milte kamaita. And she might think, now I go back to, now that the husband was niftar, I go back to what it was originally, and my avadim still eat truma. But the problem is, lo yada de meikara lo shaviti nafsha chalala. Originally, she wasn't a chalala. That's why her avadim were allowed to eat truma. Hashta shavita nafsha chalala. Now she made herself a chalala, and therefore she cannot eat truma. And her avadim also have no reason to eat truma. So the Gemara says, Tenach almana kohenet. That works if she's a bat kohen. So then there's a reason to think that maybe she's going to continue feeding her avadim truma. Almana bat Yisrael ma'ika lemeimar. What about almana bat Yisrael? What are you going to say about that? So the Gemara says, Ba'almanuta lo pligi Rabbanan. Rabbanan didn't make a distinction. Once they made a gezerah that an almana to a Kohen Gadol, her avadim cannot have, because we're worried that she's going to continue feeding them after he's niftar. So even though the gezerah only applies to an almana, that's a bat kohen, but still we make the gezerah on all almanot. Okay, so we'll stop here by Itzmar.
Next. Anybody says coming?